Developing right now on Morning News Now, holiday havoc this morning. Extreme weather is threatening 4th of July plans for millions of Americans. Right now, heavy rain and flash flooding on the East Coast are forcing flight cancellations and delays, while the West Coast and parts of the South grapple with more record-breaking heat. We have team coverage. On the hunt developing this morning, police in Baltimore searching for more than one gunman in a mass shooting at a block party that claimed the lives of at least 2 people and injured dozens more.
This was a reckless, cowardly act of violence. We will find those who are responsible, and we will not stop until we do so.
What we're learning about the moments leading up to the shooting. Fallout this morning from last week's controversial Supreme Court rulings as President Biden vows to push forward with his plans for student debt relief. We will bring you reaction from the White House. And on center court, that's right, the world-famous Wimbledon championship underway this morning with some of the biggest names in tennis set to take the court. We will talk about the favorites, the challengers, and who to look out for, including a Williams sister.
Exactly,
very exciting.
Exactly. And plus, we get that breakfast at Wimbledon. I'll just do it every morning for the next 2 weeks. Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers, and I'm very happy to be back with you. But first, we're going to begin with some severe weather, from flooding to extreme heat, slamming cities across the country. And it's threatening travel plans and even some 4th of July fireworks.
New York and Pennsylvania, all the way down to Arkansas, were battered by severe storms over the weekend. In Chicago, heavy rain flooded streets throughout the city. Some highways in the area were forced to close, and several vehicles got stuck in the flooding. All that record rainfall put the brakes on NASCAR's Chicago street race. The competition came to an unexpected halt when the downpour forced a delay that lasted more than an hour. In addition, the ongoing extreme heat from coast to coast is carrying on into another week. In Arizona, 9 counties are under an excessive heat warning through the 4th. And it comes amid a busy holiday travel weekend. The TSA says it screened nearly 2.9 million passengers on Friday, the highest number ever in a single day. Over the weekend, thousands of domestic flights were delayed ahead of the 4th of July. NBC News meteorologist Angie Lassman has your 4th of July forecast. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, let's go to NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander in Atlanta.
Well, as we gear up for the 4th of July holiday, on hot days like today, millions of people across the country are looking for just any place to stay cool. That's why a lot of people certainly will be flocking here to Atlanta Centennial Olympic Park and different parks and splash pads around the country. But it's not just the hot weather we're talking about. It's severe storms. That's also part of Mother Nature's really kind of unforgiving blow in these first weeks of summer. We saw storms overnight, high winds causing damage in parts of Alabama. In Chicago, it was the rain that caused a delay for NASCAR's Grant Park race, more than an hour-long delay there. And then parts of the country that are dealing with heat, so parts of the country like Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, are opting for a fireworks-less 4th of July. So instead of fireworks shows, they're using drone flights instead to mark the nation's birthday. Now, of course, all of this comes as millions of passengers are taking to the skies. In fact, on Friday, the TSA processed nearly 2.9 million passengers just in that one day. That's a single-day record. And as people are taking to the skies as well, we're seeing a number of delays this morning. So far, at least 400 flights are already delayed as people gear up for the holiday. Back to you.
All right, Blaine, thank you so much. Let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman for more on those blazing temperatures.
That's right. That means it's time for your Morning News Now forecast. Hey, Angie.
Hey, guys. And blazing is a great way to describe it for parts of the southeast, which have seen minor improvements, but the southwest, really some unforgiving temperatures here over the next couple of days. We've got 33 million people still under these heat alerts, where you see the bright pink for places like Phoenix and Las Vegas. That is an excessive heat warning. We are talking about really uncomfortable and even dangerous levels of heat through the day today and potentially extending into the next couple of days. Here's the lay of the land as far as afternoon high temperatures go for the West Coast. Palm Springs really sticks out here, right? 118 degrees for the afternoon high today. I know what you're thinking. It's normally hot in places like Palm Springs, Las Vegas, Phoenix, but these temperatures are running way above normal for this time of year, and it's really uncomfortable, especially in a time period where people are spending extended amounts of time outdoors for holiday celebrations. Places like Redding, 105. We continue these triple-digit temperatures well into this upcoming work week, even past the 4th of July as we get back to work. Las Vegas will hang out into the 106 to 105 region for Wednesday and Thursday. Those temperatures a little more normal, and even Palm Springs will get back to those low 100s here by the time we get to the end of the work week. Now, I mentioned the Southeast has seen a little bit of a break from the heat. We're closer to normal thanks to a cold front that has brought a bunch of rain to folks across the east, but it's also brought some more seasonable conditions for those temperatures across this region. 92 degrees in Birmingham later today. Charleston, you'll hit 95, still running a couple degrees above average, but not quite as oppressive as what it was the past couple of days. And it'll stay in this kind of range up and down parts of the East Coast. Philadelphia hits 87 as we go into tomorrow. Chicago and St. Louis, you'll be into the 90s tomorrow for 4th of July celebrations. And then we keep it summer-like really through the next couple of days. And places like New York will end up into the 90s by Thursday. Now, when it comes to the showers and the thunderstorms, that's going to be something that we'll watch specifically along the East Coast here over the next couple of days. We've seen a batch of rain move through parts of the Northeast and New England, even this morning, plus parts of the Midwest as well. And we mentioned those conditions in Chicago yesterday. We're going to see more of that rain working through. By the time we get through the next couple of days, we could see localized amounts anywhere from 2 to 3 inches, specifically around places like Boston. We could have 1 to maybe 2 inches of rain through the next couple of days. And in parts of the Midwest, that's where we're going to watch another day of potentially some strong thunderstorms and some heavy rain. That goes for the East Coast, the Mid-Atlantic specifically as well. Into this afternoon and into the evening, I know probably a lot of barbecues going on. Washington, D.C., Richmond, Charlotte, those are the places you'll really want to pay attention for the severe weather today. It'll mainly include things like strong winds, maybe some hail. The tornado risk is low, and that goes for tomorrow, too. The severe threat, though, really shifts to parts of the Midwest and the plains. So Minneapolis to Denver, you'll have to be on the lookout for those stronger storms. Same kind of hazards, though. So there's your Tuesday outlook, soggy across the east. I know it's not what you want to hear for fireworks, but speaking of the fireworks, let's take a look at exactly what you'll get by about 9 p.m. tomorrow as we gear up for some fireworks. It doesn't look great along the East Coast, but maybe we can catch some dry breaks for places like Washington, D.C., New York, Boston. Out west, though, I mean, they're dealing with the brutal temperatures, guys, but 60 degrees San Francisco, 69 Los Angeles, and dealing with mostly clear conditions. I think that's where it's at for fireworks.
Yeah, no
tomorrow.
kidding. And if you were planning on a barbecue, just bring it inside and microwave the hot dogs.
Well, Savannah, what do we feel about that?
If I have to go indoor, I'm going to boil it. No,
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay, I'm with you.
All right, thanks. No, thanks, Andy. All right, turning to Baltimore, where a manhunt is underway after a mass shooting at a weekend block party left 2 people dead and at least 28 others injured. According to police, many of the injured were minors. NBC News correspondent George Solis has the latest.
Good morning. A lot of heartbreak in this South Baltimore community this morning as police continue to investigate this mass shooting. 2 of the victims have been identified, 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez and 20-year-old Kylis Fagbemi. Police saying they are the ones that died as a result of this shooting. 28 others wounded, half of those just teenagers, and that is very upsetting to many members of this community. Now, we're told this is an annual event here that takes place. Normally, police presence is a large part of that. That did not happen. Police say they are going to continue to investigate. The mayor of Baltimore City says he will not sleep until they find the people responsible for the shooting. At this point, authorities say they believe there may have been at least 2 shooters involved in this incident. Now, this marks a very deadly year so far for mass shootings. According to the National Gun Archive, there have been 338 mass shootings. This might be one of the deadliest here in Baltimore, according to officials, just based on the number of victims that were shot. Police continue to investigate. They still have no suspect and no motive. We are expecting an update from authorities today about the latest in the investigation here. Meanwhile, in this community, outrage is growing. Many of them saying they want some accountability and they want answers. Guys, back to you.
All right, George, thank you so much.
Millions of Americans are feeling the impact of last week's major Supreme Court rulings. That includes Friday's decision, which put an end to President Biden's student loan debt relief plan. And that one, the justices were divided 6-3 along ideological lines. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now with the latest on this. Monica, good morning. So over the weekend, what has been the reaction from the White House to really what was, a key administration policy here?
Yeah, it was actually one disappointment after another for the Biden administration, Joe. And we saw the president come out and talk about this first with that affirmative action case. And that's when on Thursday he said, when he was asked if this is a rogue court, he said, quote, "This is not a normal court." And we saw that kind of dismay and concern continue after the courts blocked his student loan forgiveness plan. And specifically, the president went after Republicans here. And I'm told by top aides that that's going to be a major part of his campaign strategy heading into 2024. Here's a little more of what he had to say.
Republican officials just couldn't bear the thought of providing relief for working class, middle class Americans. I believe the court's decision to strike down my student debt relief program was a mistake, was wrong. I didn't give borrowers false hope, but the Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given, and it's real hope.
Now remember, that original plan was going to be authorized under what was known as the HEROES Act. During the COVID era emergency, they thought that would give them the legal authority. Clearly, they didn't. And so that's why now they're going to pursue a new path under the Department of Education. Joe.
Yeah, so let's talk more about that, Monica. The president announced a new plan to try and offer some relief to borrowers who need it. Explain to us what's in the plan and what the president's saying about it.
Well, because he has to start from scratch on this, essentially, they have to make up a completely new regulation. So they don't know the parameters yet of who would qualify and for how much. And also, it could frankly face some of the same legal challenges as the original plan. But they are going to start this immediately. And I'm told it could take a very long time. But in the interim, there's going to be some cushion for those borrowers who really have to start repaying as soon as this fall. So there's going to be a 12-month on-ramp repayment plan. And then there's going to be a couple other details in terms of making sure that no one is paying more than 5% of their disposable income for those payments. But there's a little more to say about that specific new measure.
I'm announcing today a new path consistent with today's ruling to provide student debt relief to as many borrowers as possible, as quickly as possible. This new path is legally sound. It's going to take longer, but in my view, it's the best path that remains to providing for as many borrowers as possible. I'm not going to stop fighting to deliver borrowers what they need, particularly those at the bottom end of the economic scale.
Now, the president's approval rating with young voters wasn't in great shape. And then he did announce this plan, remember, before the midterm elections, and he saw a jump in those polls. So this is a constituency that's really key for him, especially young minority voters who were really counting on this. And really, to put it into context and remind everybody, we're talking about 43 million Americans affected by this. Joe, still waiting.
Yeah, Monica, while we have you, let's talk about that other big Supreme Court decision that came down on Friday. They ruled in favor of the Colorado web designer who refused to work on same-sex marriages on their weddings. That vote also along ideological lines, 6-3. What's the latest reaction to that decision?
We did hear from Cabinet Secretary Pete Buttigieg over the weekend talking about specifically his concern with this case in the context of he's arguing that there are sort of some cases here that are being brought before the Supreme Court that are dealing with solutions, he argued, before there even is a problem. Specifically with this case in 303 Creative, there wasn't even somebody who was asking for a website, it seems. This was sort of a more hypothetical scenario. And then the president actually released a statement also saying he was deeply concerned with this decision, saying this really could have far-reaching impacts on the LGBTQ community, and that then that could even extend beyond that, he said, to other people of other faith, of disabilities, that really the most vulnerable populations, he says, with a Supreme Court ruling like this, could be at risk for rolling back rights. And that is a main concern for this administration, Joe.
All right, Monica, thank you so much.
We're going to stay on this now and bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, good morning. Always great to see you. So let's start with this decision on student loan debt relief. Walk us through what exactly it was here that was at play in terms of the legality of it that led to this opinion that we ended up getting.
The key is this. The Biden administration attempted to use a provision of the HEROES Act that allowed it to waive or modify these student loan obligations. And the key issue, one of the key issues after standing, became whether or not waive or modify means to cancel. Did the executive branch have the power to cancel student loan debt under those provisions waive or modify. And much of the battle at oral argument came down to defining what waive or modify meant and whether it included, essentially, in the view of some of the conservative justices, a massive spending bill, because to cancel out that debt is really spending which is traditionally done by Congress and not the executive branch.
So, Danny, with that context, is there a way that this comes back into play here that the White House can get around this? Monica just very well laid out President Biden's new plan. Could that ultimately be stopped by the Supreme Court using that same reasoning?
Well, it's interesting if you take a step back. I mean, the essence of the Supreme Court's ruling is that this can be done, but not by you, the president, and the executive branch, unless Congress authorizes it. So after being told you can't do this, Biden's response is, I'm still going to do this. So it will be interesting to see how, and we saw it during his press conference, that his plan is to do it again, but look closely at the contours of the Supreme Court's decision and do it in a way that comports with the Supreme Court's ruling, but still is an action by the executive branch to essentially spend this money instead of, waive or modify will no longer be an issue. It will actually be canceling out this debt. Now, of course, underlying all of this is the fact that at any time, Congress could easily cancel out all that debt, but that's a different branch of the government. And essentially what the Supreme Court's ruling is that given the laws that exist today, the text of the law, President Biden does not have that authority. But President Biden is essentially saying, hang on, I'm going to find that authority.
Danny, I also want to get your take on the other decision that Joe and Monica were just talking about from the Supreme Court regarding LGBTQ rights, with the court ruling in favor of that Colorado web designer refusing to work on same-sex weddings. What kind of case would need to be presented for the high court to reconsider that decision?
I don't know that they would reconsider so much this particular set of facts, because these particular set of facts deal with a web designer, whether or not a web designer's product is a sale or it is speech. What I expect we'll see now is a bunch of other different gray area fact situations. Look, on the one hand, it will never be the case that somebody who comes into a diner and orders a cup of coffee, the diner owner can't say, I'm not giving you this cup of coffee based on your race. That's the easy case. That's a sale. There's nothing creative or artistic about handing somebody a cup of coffee. Although, then I think, well, some of these baristas, they make fascinating little foam things on top of the coffee. Maybe you would have an argument there. And look, this is something the liberal justices brought up, and I think they have a solid point, is that you can take discrimination and wrap it into something called artistic expression and still discriminate. Some of the examples they gave really showed someone who would clearly discriminate, but just couch it in terms of, I'm an artiste and I'm expressing myself.
All right, Danny, as always, fantastic points and great context. Thank you so much.
The ongoing battle to stop fentanyl trafficking into the U.S. was a big topic on this week's Meet the Press. Moderator Chuck Todd spoke exclusively with the head of the Drug Enforcement Administration. Here's Chuck now with more on their conversation.
Well, hello there, Joe and Savannah. This week on a special edition of Meet the Press, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram joined me to discuss the growing fentanyl epidemic in our country. Take a look what she had to say about U.S. cooperation with China and Mexico, the two global players responsible for the illicit drug trade.
So we have had recent conversations with Chinese authorities, both in Beijing and in Washington, talking about improving law enforcement cooperation. And what I would say to you, Chuck, is that DEA stands ready to work with anyone who will work with us.
Is it true that your cooperation has basically disappeared in the last couple of years?
So for about the past year, we have not had the cooperation that we want to have. And of course, we have offices in the People's Republic of China and all over Asia. We have 334 offices around the world. So the recent conversations, I think, are very important. And now we have to see if we can turn this into law enforcement cooperation.
When it comes to your ability to choke the supply, we have two countries that are not doing business with the United States on an honest basis. One is China, and I'd argue the other is Mexico. And I'd ask you this, these cartels, who's in charge of Mexico? Is it the government, or is the government afraid of these cartels?
So what I would say is, our relentless focus right now is on these two cartels. And while there are two countries that are the major, obviously Mexico is where Sinaloa and Jalisco are based, and the vast majority of precursor chemicals are coming from China. We are now tracking these two cartels in more than 45 countries, many of whom are good partners to the United States.
You can see my full interview with her and a lot more at MeetThePress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every single weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Chuck, thank you so much. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a different kind of 4th of July display taking flight this year. Why more cities are ditching the fireworks for drones.
Also, though, up next, breaking news: a violent night in the occupied West Bank as Israel launches one of its biggest military operations in years. We will be right back. Breaking this morning, Israel has launched a massive military operation in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin, one of its biggest in the Palestinian territory in years. Overnight, Israeli forces carried out an aerial and ground assault on a refugee camp. Health officials say at least 8 Palestinians were killed and dozens more were injured. NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now for more on this. Hi, Molly. Good morning. So walk us through what is happening here. Why has Israel carried out this attack?
Savannah, Joe, good morning to both of you. That's right. And Savannah, as you said, it is one of the biggest Israeli raids on the city of Jenin that we have seen in years. Jenin is in the northern occupied West Bank, and it has really been the focal point of these near nightly Israeli raids. It is also, Savannah, one of the few places that you will actually find organized Palestinian militants who are incredibly and heavily armed and organized. Huge gunfights broke out after about 2,000 Israeli soldiers went in, dozens of armored vehicles and drone strikes from the air to clear the way as they entered for this operation. Now, the Israeli military is calling this a focused operation. They say it will last about 1 to 3 days. As you mentioned, the Palestinian Health Ministry said 8 people were killed. That death toll is likely to rise. Dozens injured, many from live ammunition. But we do understand from the Health Ministry that many of those injuries are critical. Savannah?
Molly, I know we've also been getting reaction from the Palestinians, including from Jenin's deputy governor. What is he saying about this current situation?
We have been getting reaction, and actually Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is holding an emergency security meeting right now. We do not have notes kind of for anything that was discussed in that, but we do have some quotes from Jenin's deputy governor. He gave an interview to Al Jazeera earlier today. He says it's not just targeting the militants. He said it is also targeting people. He says they, and he's talking about the Israeli military, have cut off all electricity, telecommunications, and water. He calls it collective punishment. What we have seen in videos that we have verified overnight, Savannah, is actually bulldozers blocking some of the main roads in and out of Jenin. It is called kind of a refugee camp. It is a warren of roads. It is a city with more than 10,000 residents. But what Palestinian residents are telling us is that that made it very hard for ambulances to actually get inside, get the injured to hospitals or to medical clinics, and to evacuate the bodies of victims. Savannah?
Molly, also, we know, of course, violence has been escalating in the West Bank for months. We've seen this series of Israeli raids. And then also, in addition to that, these Jewish settler attacks on Palestinian villages. How significant is what we're seeing right now, what's just happened in Jenin overnight, and what are we watching for in the next few hours?
Yeah, Savannah, and I feel like a little bit of a broken record because we have seen this really stepping up and escalating. Today, though, once again marks a huge and serious escalation, not only kind of the breadth of the Israeli military operation, more than 2,000 soldiers, but also the fact that aerial power was used with such force. Last month, we saw the first Israeli drone strike in the occupied West Bank, really for the first time in about 2 decades. Well, this time overnight, we saw multiple drone strikes. So what we're watching for, though, really closely in the next couple hours, Prime Minister Netanyahu is meeting with his security council right now, having a security assessment, so we'll wait to see what he says after that. He has been under serious pressure from the right-wing factions of his government, really to launch a broad-scale, full operation in the occupied West Bank. So is this just the start of something bigger? The other thing, of course, we're watching for is on the Gaza border to see if the Islamic Jihad or if Hamas fires rockets into southern Israel later today. Savannah?
All right, Molly Hunter, stay safe, and thank you very much.
To other international headlines now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to meet world leaders this week, his first summit since the Wagner Rebellion.
That's right. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lovanca joins us now from Rome. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Good morning. That's right. President Putin is set to virtually attend tomorrow's international meeting with the leaders of China and India. Now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a security group to counter Western alliances from East Asia to the Indian Ocean. The summit focuses on deepening the country's security efforts, tackling terrorism and drug trafficking, and enhancing economic cooperation. It also poses as an opportunity for President Putin to re-establish strength and crush any doubt that his government is still being challenged after last month's Wagner Group rebellion. Now to Sudan, where a suspected measles outbreak in the country's displacement camps has taken the lives of at least 13 children. According to a medical group, the White Nile camps have received more than 3,000 patients at their 2 clinics in the month of June alone and treated 223 children with suspected measles. The violence between the Sudanese armed forces and paramilitary rapid support forces has caused a steep rise in Sudanese refugees. The influx of displaced people is creating a dire need for increased assistance, medical services, shelter and water, making the situation critical. And we end this short tour of the world with the winners of the 6th annual Drone Photo Awards. The photo of the year was awarded to an aerial photo of thousands of protesters on the streets of Tel Aviv on the 9th straight week of demonstrations against Prime Minister Netanyahu's judicial overhaul plan. Other highly commended photos included a breakfast gathering for Ramadan among the ruins in Idlib, Syria, and a human chain in Chongqing, China, that helped pass water and materials to extinguish a mountain fire. The winning photos will be showcased here in Italy at Siena's San Galgano's Abbey from September 28th to November 19th. Back to you guys.
Right, cool photos, Claudio. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, coming up, enter at your own risk. That is the warning to beachgoers on this long holiday weekend after a series of shark encounters. The warning now from one woman who survived.
Plus, not so sweet. Health officials could soon sound the alarm about a link between popular sugar substitutes and cancer. What doctors want you to know. Our Dr. John Torres is here after the break. Welcome back. The quick catch of an eagle-eyed dad may have saved some lives at a North Carolina amusement park over the weekend. Jeremy Wagner shot this video of a crack in one of the structural posts of the Fury 325 roller coaster at Carowinds Amusement Park in Charlotte. Wagner says he shot the video from the parking lot of the park as he waited for his 14-year-old daughter. You can see as the entire roller coaster shifts as the 325-foot tall ride whips by. Wagner turned over the footage to park officials. The North Carolina State Department of Labor has shut down the ride indefinitely as it investigates. In a statement, Carowinds said that all rides in the park undergo daily inspections and that safety is their top priority.
Well, it seems like a big miss then for daily inspections. All right, well, now to a new warning for beachgoers following a series of recent shark encounters, including an attack last week in Florida. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas sat down with the survivor. Here's her experience.
As beachgoers soak up the sun this holiday, there's been a threat lurking off the coast of Florida. 4 shark encounters in the last few months.
It was really, really painful.
12-year-old Magnolia Woodhead was swimming in Cocoa Beach when a shark took a bite of her right leg.
I pushed it away because I knew that it hurt. It hurt so bad.
She was rushed to the hospital where she received 50 stitches. Luckily, she's expected to make a full recovery. And this terrifying scene caught on camera.
Keep coming. Keep coming.
Malia Tribble was paddleboarding from the Bahamas to Florida, a shark trailing right behind her.
Hard to tell.
I felt something tap my board or touch my board. And so at that point, once Ricky turned around and I saw his face drop.
Her husband helping guide her to safety.
Surreal is definitely the story.
Despite these recent scares, experts say shark attacks are very rare.
Even on a year like this year, where it seems like there's more, it's still actually incredibly low probability.
In 2022, there were 41 unprovoked attacks in the United States, 16 of them in Florida alone, the state with the most beaches in the continental U.S.
And that means you put a lot of sharks and a lot of people in the water at the same time. And that's when accidents can happen.
The best advice from experts, remain alert when swimming in the ocean, stay in groups, and always make sure a lifeguard is nearby. Guad Venegas, NBC News, Miami.
Now to some concerning news about the relationship between one of the most common sweeteners and cancer.
According to Reuters, which cites two sources, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer is set to announce that aspartame is, quote, possibly carcinogenic to humans later this month.
NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres is here to discuss. Dr. John, good to see you. All right, so aspartame is found in many products, from Diet Coke to chewing gum to candy. So how concerning is this, and how much is a safe amount to consume?
So start off with a safe amount. Moderation is the key here, and there is no safe amount or unsafe amount. It's just basically just the moderation is something you want to make sure that you hit with this type of thing. And when you look at what they're talking about here, they actually have 4 different categories, this World Health Organization panel. 4 different categories, non-categorized, meaning they can't really figure it out. Possible, probable, and carcinogenic. This is possible, which is way down at the bottom of it. To put it in perspective, other possible ones, aloe vera. Probable ones, one probable one working a night shift. And so they put them in different categories. And all this organization is saying is there is possibly a link to cancer in some animal studies and people studies, but there's no risk here. And what some experts are saying, it's equivalent to saying it's possible a meteorite's going to hit us and kill everybody on Earth, but it's not probable.
So you're getting at this, but there's essentially a lot of debate around the fact that they're doing this, including this group. There's a group called the International Council of Beverages Association. They are saying it could, quote, needlessly mislead consumers into consuming more sugar rather than choosing safe, no and low sugar options. So essentially maybe people thinking, uh-oh, I can't drink Diet Coke because I heard this headline, I'm going to go for regular Coke, something like that. What do you think about that concern?
And I think the message to get across here is this is not to avoid it. This is just to understand that, you know, there are carcinogenics, there are cancer-causing issues or possible ones, and a lot of things we use. So moderation is the key here. So go light on this. You know, don't use it as one of your main things you use throughout your diet during the day. But if you do it occasionally, it's not going to really be that big of an issue. Again, you know, it depends too. Type 2 diabetics are saying, yeah, they should probably still keep using this as a sugar substitute. Others might want to think about it.
So, I mean, this news comes just after the WHO released guidelines last month against using artificial sweeteners for weight control, saying that, quote, there may be potential undesirable effects from long-term use. Walk us through those guidelines. What are the potential risks?
So what they're talking about in the guidelines is if you're using this to control your weight, studies have shown it doesn't really do that. Short-term maybe, but long-term it's not really controlling your weight. But that's all they really said is this is for weight control type situations. And they're saying essentially this is a processed food. You need to look at it like other processed foods as well. And so for weight control, probably not going to help you out very much, so don't look at it towards that. You want to go ahead and bring all sweeteners down, including artificial sweeteners and natural sweeteners, and have a healthy diet.
So this full report that's going to give us a little bit more context is expected on July 14th. What else are you looking for in that?
Well, I think what you're going to find on July 14th is, again, this is an advisory panel that advises the World Health Organization, and I think you're going to see this next panel say, agree with them to a certain extent. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't, but I think in this case they're going to say, yes, go ahead and moderate your artificial sweeteners just to make sure, because some studies have looked at it and said, you know, possibly these observational studies, it could cause some health issues, particularly cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes, maybe. And so they're saying this is an interim finding of saying, let's go ahead and keep people safe until we can figure out more about this.
All right, Dr. John Torres, thank you so much. Great to have you here with us this week. Well, with the recent increase in wildfires across the country, some cities are looking to ditch their 4th of July fireworks displays in favor of a different form of aerial entertainment. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro tells us more.
It's an Independence Day tradition.
The nation's capital over the Washington Mall.
As American as apple pie.
People watch the sparkling spectacle from their windows, rooftops, and both sides of the East River.
Fireworks historically drawing thousands of Americans every 4th of July. But this year, the pyrotechnic flashes and bangs could be replaced by drone light displays. The high-tech, high-flying theatrics have become elaborate, eye-catching shows.
Quite frankly, some of them are more creative and more innovative than the fireworks that we see.
Air pollution, a big factor in making the switch in Imperial Beach, California last year.
There's no smoke. There's no particles falling in the ocean.
I'd rather have this because I love the fireworks, but, you know, we need the environment very, very badly.
Experts say all those exploding chemicals and in some cases heavy metals can carry health risks in skies already hazy with toxic smoke from Canadian wildfires.
The short-term health effects are some respiratory system problems caused by these higher concentrations of particulate matter in the air.
Speaking of wildfires, they're another reason for extinguishing the sparks. The community of Angel Fire, New Mexico, forced to evacuate last spring as a wildfire scorched hundreds of thousands of acres nearby, taking no chances and opting for a fireless show this 4th, using drones to create quite the spectacle, all without the actual fire. Salt Lake City following suit to be conscientious of both our air quality and the potential for wildfires. Communities in Colorado also lighting up with the LEDs.
I have previewed our show and I'm really excited. It's going to be put to patriotic music.
A drone company there says they've been flooded with hundreds of requests for patriotic displays nationwide.
We were booked for the 4th of July 4 months ago.
Macy's, though, still the largest fireworks show in the country.
25 minutes of non-stop pyrotechnics that are going to dance across the skies.
That dazzling, flashing grand finale not going dark anytime soon.
We have lived here for my entire life, and every year it gets bigger and brighter.
All right, thanks to Valerie Castro for that story. Here's the thing, though. While drone companies say, as you heard, that they're seeing this increased demand for their shows every year, especially from those western states where fire danger is a real concern, the American Pyrotechnics Association does say that revenue for fireworks displays also steadily increasing. So, coming up now, hiring. Police departments across America struggling to recruit and retain officers. More on their efforts to fill the force.
Plus, game, set, match. Wimbledon is officially underway with some of the biggest names in tennis set to compete. Who will be there? Who won't? Next on Morning News Now. We're back now with a look at the state of policing in America. Police departments across the country are struggling to recruit and retain qualified people. That means many are now offering never-before-seen compensation packages to try and fill those openings. NBC News senior consumer investigative correspondent, News Now anchor Vicki Wynn has the details.
It's a 911 moment in law enforcement, with police departments nationwide losing officers.
Well, it's nowhere near as dangerous, which is awesome.
After 5 years with Chicago PD, Officer Justin Lawler joined the force in Palm Springs, California.
Life out here is very different.
He says lingering health effects from being stabbed on the job in 2020 and ongoing tension between the public and police prompted him to leave the Windy City.
Everybody just wants to tell you that you're a pig. They want to announce all these bad words to you. And I'm honestly just trying to help people. But coming out here in Palm Springs and like this city, the police are respected.
What role did the incentives play in you choosing Palm Springs?
The incentives, they did play a good part because, I mean, it was a big benefit over the other desert cities, and that being close to the LA area.
Palm Springs Chief Andrew Mills says the department offers bonuses and factors in time served in its pay packages to recruit experienced officers. What are the reasons that officers are giving you for why they're leaving some of these bigger cities?
You know, it's all individual, and this was a horribly tremendous experience over the last few years where you had COVID, the uncertainty of whether or not you're going to come home because of that, and then rolling that right into a lot of social unrest. I think that they're looking for that community where they see support.
He says policing in 2023 is a tougher job than it's ever been, as officers are expected to deal with social issues such as mental illness and homelessness.
Right now, the police are the only ones here to handle things that are incumbent on all of society. And I've got a 24-year-old kid with a BA degree or maybe a high school education trying to solve problems that PhDs can't solve.
This is really a problem that is in every corner of the United States.
Ian Adams is a professor of criminology and criminal justice at the University of South Carolina. He says experienced officers are leaving larger departments for smaller ones, though it's difficult to pinpoint how many. Some factors for the exodus include record retirement numbers and quality of life concerns. Some officers we spoke to say efforts to defund the police following the deaths of George Floyd and Tyree Nichols also weigh on them.
Policing is indeed facing a staffing crisis that it hasn't really seen in modern history.
An NBC News analysis of FBI data shows officer counts fell 2.3% from 2019 to 2022. It's prompting agencies to compete for the best officers with new incentives. New Orleans PD offering a $20,000 hiring bonus for experienced officers. North Las Vegas Police offering $30,000 and $5,000 for moving costs. Officers who are military vets get another $5,000 to sign. The city of Alameda in Northern California offering a $75,000 hiring bonus to both transfers and academy graduates. That's on top of a starting salary of $110,000. Compare that to NYPD, which recently raised its base salary to $55,000. The staffing shortage is also a matter of timing. Some 100,000 officers hired under the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act are now retiring. What does that mean for public safety in the cities where these officers are leaving?
It has horrible effects on public safety. When you have large numbers of officers leaving our cities that are most in need right now, following record increases in homicide and other forms of violent crime in the last few years, obviously we have a public safety problem.
The majority of police departments in the U.S. have fewer than 100 officers, so losing even a few can have a major impact on the communities they serve. Adam says it costs about $130,000 to train an academy graduate into an officer that can go on a 911 call. Back to you.
All right, Vicki, thank you. Financial headlines now. Apple's newly unveiled VR headset may be scarce on the shelves.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money headlines this morning. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Jill. Good morning to you. All right, let's start with Apple because it is reportedly cutting back production forecast for its Vision Pro AR headset. Now, the Vision Pro, which is expected to go on sale early next year, has a starting price of $3,499. Now, that's more than 3 times that of the most expensive MetaQuest headsets. And the Financial Times reports Apple's only manufacturer of the Vision Pro plans to make fewer than 400,000 units in 2024. Apple had previously targeted sales of 1 million headsets in the first 12 months. Reports say plans for a more affordable version have been pushed back. Goldman Sachs is looking to get out of its partnership with Apple as part of a broader retreat from consumer banking. The Wall Street Journal reports Goldman could hand off its Apple credit card and other initiatives to American Express. It's also considered offloading its partnership with General Motors to Amex or another card issuer. Any move would require Apple to sign off. And speaking of Apple, it's working on new health features for AirPods. Now, Bloomberg reports the first would let them conduct hearing tests. AirPods already support audiograms, which iOS software can use to tune the volume or adjust for hearing loss. Apple is also exploring how to market AirPods as a hearing aid after the FDA made it easier to buy over-the-counter options. The other new AirPods feature ways for the earbuds to measure body temperature, guys.
Oh. Wow.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right now, they just mean I can't hear because I have music in them. And all I do is go, what?
Yeah.
Huh?
I'm a corded headphone person. I don't like, every time you get on the phone with somebody with AirPods in, it's like 30 seconds before it's actually working right.
I know, right?
Nuts.
Yes. I prefer the cord.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Me too.
Silvana, thank you.
Thank you. All right, now let's get to some sports news. The world's most famous grass court tennis tournament is underway.
Yeah, that's right. The Wimbledon championships have started. While some of the game's biggest names might be missing, others are returning for another crack at the crown.
Yeah, here to discuss is Lucas Weiss. He's a staff editor at The Athletic. Lucas, it's so great to have you with us this morning. So first off, who are the favorites here in both men's and women's games? Can anyone stop Djokovic? That's the big question, right?
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me on. Yes, on the men's side, the question is, who is going to stop Novak Djokovic? And look, Djokovic hasn't lost at Wimbledon since 2017. And if he's going to win at Wimbledon this year, he would tie Roger Federer for most Wimbledons in men's singles. Look, it's just hard to beat Novak Djokovic on grass. But I think if there's one player to do it, it's Carlos Alcaraz. He's the #1 seed entering Wimbledon. He won at Queens leading up to Wimbledon. Of course, he didn't beat Djokovic in Paris, but I think Alcaraz has learned a lot from that match. He could definitely try to beat Djokovic if they do meet in the final. But look, Novak has 23 Grand Slam titles, very challenging to beat. Now, on the women's side, I like Iga Swiatek. She, to me, is the favorite on the women's side. She, of course, won Roland Garros this year. Now, she hasn't had a lot of grass court success in her career, but she did make it to the semifinals in her tune-up event at the Bad Homburg Open. And I think for Iga coming into Wimbledon, she doesn't have the pressure of trying to defend a winning streak, unlike last year. So I think she's just focused on trying to win her first Wimbledon, which will etch herself into the annals of women's tennis history.
All right, so we know one player who won't be in it this year, Nick Kyrgios. The Australian had to withdraw because of a wrist injury. Obviously, that's a huge blow for him. He was a finalist last year. He took a set off Djokovic. Was he expected to be one of the main challengers to Djokovic, perhaps the biggest competition?
No question. Nick Kyrgios provides a fire on the grass court with his dominant serve, his powerful ground strokes. And he just brings eyeballs to tennis because of his fiery personality. So he will certainly be missed. And I think for a lot of the men's players looking at this, seeing Kyrgios not the draw, they're thinking, wow, now I have a chance to move further in the draw because Kyrgios isn't there. So certainly a loss for the tournament. Hopefully Nick Kyrgios recovers from this latest wrist injury. We haven't really seen Nick return to that level that we saw a year ago when he made the Wimbledon final. So hopefully he can recover and be back for the U.S. Open later this summer.
Absolutely. All right. Also, one player who will be back is former champion Venus Williams. People are so excited about this. 43 years old, making her 24th Wimbledon appearance. I mean, is there anyone right now just with this kind of longevity in their career?
Not at the moment. Listen, Venus Williams' first Wimbledon was 1997. And she's still playing. It's just truly remarkable to see the consistency and the longevity of Venus, a 5-time Wimbledon champion. And look, she had a great tune-up event for Wimbledon. She won against Camila Giorgi in 3 sets, winning 7-6 in the third. So Venus is just someone that's just loving tennis right now, and she has a chance to really wow the crowd once again. She's on center court Monday, taking on Alina Svitolina, who is playing her second slam since coming back from maternity leave. So for American tennis fans right now, with so much turnover at the top of the women's game, it's just so nice to see Venus playing.
Absolutely, it really is. Lucas Weiss, thank you so much. Fun to get to talk to us. This kicks off. Coming up, it's the accomplishment of a lifetime.
When we return, we're going to introduce you to a woman who just became the oldest person to visit all of America's national parks. You're watching Morning News Now.
Good morning. So if having a coffee first thing in the morning is non-negotiable for you, scientists may have figured out why. Portuguese researchers wanted to see if the caffeine is the only thing responsible for making us feel better, making us feel more awake in the morning, or if other factors like coffee's scent or flavor were important. So to test this, here's what they did. They scanned the brains of coffee drinkers when they had coffee, and then also when they just had actually only caffeine diluted in hot water. Well, they found that consuming the actual coffee heightened activity in the parts of the brain dealing with short-term memory, attention, and overall focus, while consuming caffeine by itself did not. Their theory is that the sight, smell, taste of coffee may be helpful in making people feel alert. So you know when you smell coffee brewing and you're like, ooh.
What is coffee diluted or caffeine diluted in hot water?
I know. What exactly? Yeah,
just
caffeine
decaf,
extract,
basically.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Finally this hour, have you ever thought about doing something fun, but then stop because you worry you're too old? Yep. Well, NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz introduces us to a woman who shows us you are never too old to write a new chapter.
Wow. You said you forgot something.
Oh, I forgot my bikini.
In her late 80s, Joy Ryan and her grandson Brad came up with a crazy idea to visit all 63 U.S. national parks.
Everywhere we went, there was something different. Every park has some beautiful thing that the other park doesn't have. And it's something to look forward to. It sure is a lovely day.
And they didn't just show up, see the parks, and leave. They have taken some pretty wild excursions, from zip lining and even whitewater rafting.
It's one thing to go whitewater rafting in Class 3 rapids in Alaska by yourself. It's another thing when you're holding on to a 91-year-old woman who can't swim.
But the 7-year journey was so much more than just a checklist.
I don't know how to describe the feeling of watching Old Faithful erupt and then also watching that through the eyes of somebody who waited 85, 87, 90, now 93 years to see such wonderful things. You know, I'm able to see the world through her eyes, slow down, be present, and not just assume that I'm going to be back one day.
And what's a family trip without a little bit of bickering here and there?
What's your favorite thing to tell your grandson?
Turn down the radio.
And I say, crank up your hearing aid.
That wasn't just fun memories they got out of this. Joy broke a record, becoming the oldest person to visit every park.
When you go through those gates, you don't know what you're going to see, but it's going to be beautiful, whatever it is.
I realized that she had a huge chapter that was yet to be written in her life.
Hey, Grandma Joy, you want to show the world what you can do with your new knees?
Yeah, here we go.
Joy giving her grandson Brad a new outlook on life.
Life is so much more than career. It's really about connection, experience, and she has given me that perspective that I needed.
Oh, and they're not done yet. Joy just got her hands on her very first passport.
And we're going to Kenya for 15 days.
We figured now that we've seen America from coast to coast and top to bottom that it's time to head overseas.
They're not stopping with Africa. They have their heart set on every single continent. And Joy with a piece of advice for anyone who thinks they can't explore the world too.
There's beautiful things everywhere, and you'd be amazed at what you can see when just from the car seat.
Life is yours for the taking. Your age is not a limiting factor.
Oh, thank you, Gotti. And by the way, their first park was the Smoky Mountains. Their final stop was the National Park of American Samoa in the South Pacific, 6,700 miles from their home in Duncan Falls, Ohio. Oh. So many life lessons there. I also just love seeing her roll in the sand.
Yeah.
That looked fun, too.
So sweet. And what great time,
exactly.
With your grandma. It's amazing.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Right now on Morning News Now, heating up. It is a split screen of wicked weather that's putting quite the damper on some Independence Day celebrations. From the unreal heat that's scorching the west and deep south to those severe storms battering the east coast. It's all serving as one big 4th of July firecracker for the millions of Americans hitting the roads and skies for the long weekend. What you should know this morning before your great escape. Out of the water, we have got a holiday weekend warning for all those beachgoers out there. A recent swell of shark encounters off Florida's coast now has officials calling on vacationing Americans to stay alert. How you can keep safe on your summer getaway. Swift reaction pouring in this morning from Washington and beyond. The dust just starting to settle after that whirlwind week of landmark Supreme Court decisions on hot-button issues like affirmative action in the Biden administration's student debt relief plan. How both the White House and those on the campaign trail are responding. And love story at 6 feet 7 inches. John Drury might just be Taylor Swift's biggest fan, and this tatted up trucker is taking to TikTok to let the world know about it. And you get to chat with John a little later this hour.
I'm starstruck. He's the dancing trucker on TikTok. He is quite famous. And yes, we share a love of Taylor Swift.
What can bring you together? Anyone can be brought together by Taylor.
So great to have this on a Monday. Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. We're going to begin with that extreme heat we are seeing from coast to coast, dragging into another week ahead of the July 4th celebration.
And that's right. Sacramento, just one city dealing with triple-digit temperatures. People there doing things like eating snow cones to try to beat the heat. You saw them cooling off in those fountains. Also, as officials have opened several cooling centers across the region. And in Arizona, 9 counties are under an excessive heat warning through the 4th. Well, the heat combined with severe storms in the forecast is threatening to put a damper on holiday travel, both on the roads and in the air. And, of course, also those 4th of July celebrations. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander joins us now from Atlanta on all this. Hey, Blaine, good morning.
Guys, good morning to you. You're absolutely right. You talk about that heat. We're certainly feeling it down here in Georgia. In fact, on days like today, people are looking for any way to stay cool. So here at Atlanta's Centennial Olympic Park, even just looking at the fountain is kind of refreshing. But weather really is giving kind of a 1-2 punch between the dangerous heat and the severe storms. And all of it comes as travelers are dealing with growing number of flight delays, all ahead of a very busy holiday.
From severe storms to scorching, deadly heat, in these first few weeks of summer, Mother Nature has been unforgiving. This holiday weekend is no exception. In Chicago, Grant Park's NASCAR street race came to an unexpected halt when record rainfall forced a more than hour-long delay.
The amount of rain is just so severe. The visibility would be near impossible, and the standing water would be impossible to race in.
In upstate New York, a massive downpour flooded campgrounds and forced families to evacuate their homes. While in St. Louis, the storms turned deadly, uprooting a tree and killing a woman in her car. And in Gadsden, Alabama, winds topped 65 miles per hour, knocking down trees, power lines, and the canopy of this shaved ice business. Elsewhere, it's the heat that's taking a toll. The National Weather Service in Sacramento summed up the triple-digit highs with a single word: hot.
I do not like the heat. I do not like this heat.
In Arizona, 9 counties are under an excessive heat warning through the 4th, with Tucson and Phoenix expected to reach record-setting highs. The heat and dry conditions are forcing some cities to spark a new tradition. Parts of Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico are opting for a 4th without fireworks. Instead, drone flights.
It's going to be put to patriotic music.
It all comes as a soaring number of travelers hit the skies. On Friday, the TSA screened nearly 2.9 million passengers, the highest number ever in a single day. But for passengers on the nearly 25,000 delayed domestic flights over the weekend, it's been a turbulent ride. At airport after airport, stranded luggage tells the frustrating story.
We just got to Houston and they can't find a captain for our flight. Like, I cannot do this anymore.
From busy skies to hectic highways, more than 43 million Americans are expected to hit the road ahead of the 4th.
And if you are planning to hit the road, believe it or not, today is actually one of the best days to do it. AAA says the traffic is relatively low, making today one of the best days over the holiday weekend to travel. But guys, all of that ends tomorrow around noon. That's when the roads get crowded again, people heading back from their destinations. So if you're going to get out and travel, do it and get off the road by tomorrow afternoon, guys.
All right, Blaine, thank you so much.
You'd be cutting your holiday short.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a little less sunny news. Some stormy weather could be headed your way.
That is right. Angie Lastman is back to tell us about that. Hey, Angie.
Hey, guys, got to bring your umbrella for folks on the East Coast. We're going to be tracking some of these showers and thunderstorms, and even some of them potentially could be strong throughout the day today. We'll talk about the severe weather tomorrow, too, for 4th of July. Here's what it looks like on satellite and radar right now. Not bad in places like New York, Washington, D.C., where we did see some rain working through into the early hours of the morning. Now most of that rain, even for places like Boston, on the way out, but more to come. You can see the system that's ushering in this rain is continuing to march a little farther to the east. So we'll kind of have these scattered showers and thunderstorms focused along the East Coast as it continues to move just offshore. Now, the spotty storms are going to continue through today, even into tomorrow, but they'll be a little less likely for us here and less widespread for sure for your Tuesday. That doesn't mean that you'll have a completely dry day, though, for your 4th of July in places like New York and Washington, D.C. We also are going to see the potential for some of those stronger storms in the mid-Atlantic, specifically in parts of the high plains. 34 million people at risk of this. We could see some strong winds, some large hail. And tomorrow, it stays in the high plains. Places like Minneapolis, stretching into Denver, could see some of those stronger storms as well. So just an FYI, if you're going to be out and about in the afternoon hours celebrating 4th of July. Meanwhile, we cannot talk about the heat because this has gotten so many people's attention over the past couple of days. 33 million people at risk for some of those heat alerts right now. And you can see that bright pink out on the West Coast. Here's why. We have excessive heat warnings in effect for these temperatures that are going to just end up into the triple digits for a lot of folks later this afternoon. And these are just the actual temperatures. We're going to have feels like temperatures in some spots even warmer than that. Palm Springs heads to 118 tomorrow to celebrate 4th of July, guys. Phoenix 115. So it's going to be a brutal and really warm forecast for them there.
It's a dry heat.
That's what they say, right?
118 degrees.
Sure. My goodness. All right, Angie, thank you so much. Well, many people plan on spending their 4th of July holiday at the beach, of course, but there has been a recent string of unprovoked shark bites, with several of them happening in Florida. Well, now Americans are being urged to stay alert as they celebrate at the shore. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from Miami. Hey, Sam, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, Joe, good morning. Let's put it this way. Would you rather win the lottery
or get bitten by a shark, because according to marine biologists, the odds are about the same. I have a feeling most people will land on the winning the lottery part, but the reality is here in Florida in the last week, there have been 3 shark encounters, and so one of those involves a 12-year-old girl who had required 50 stitches, another a paddleboarder who was followed by a hammerhead shark. For all the fun and frolicking at beaches nationwide over the July 4th holiday, many families are still keeping an eye out for unlikely holiday visitors, sharks.
I really like going to the beach, especially with my family, and it's kind of scary, the fact that sharks attacks been happening. We kind of stay in a group and we don't go as far.
Despite the highly unlikely shark scenario, there were only 41 unprovoked shark bites in the U.S. all of last year. Florida's been struck by 3 incidents in a little over a week. That includes 12-year-old Magnolia Woodhead visiting from Philadelphia, who ducked a wave in Cocoa Beach, only to find a shark latched onto her leg, requiring 50 stitches.
It hurts like incredibly bad. It was really, really painful, and I just wasn't expecting it, and I was like, oh, because it was so scary.
And a freaky following for Malia Tribble.
Malia, come to the side.
Whose 80-mile paddleboarding trip from the Bahamas to Palm Beach County to raise money for cystic fibrosis was briefly interrupted by a hammerhead shark. Malia, you look so calm. Was that actually what was going on internally as you're coming toward the boat?
I mean, I think it was instinct. It was fight or flight. In my situation, ignorance is bliss. I didn't really see the size of the shark. I didn't see how close it was at that time.
Marine biologists quick to point out that we're in their home. And more often than not, sharks are just surveying their surroundings.
Does it pose a threat or is it potential food? So when sharks follow people or come over to check them out, that's merely an animal that's being curious.
Still, not all encounters end harmlessly. Last month, first responders rescued a man who was bitten while spearfishing in Marathon, and another 35-year-old sustained a foot injury fishing off a dock in Summerlin Key. Florida traditionally leading the nation in unprovoked shark bites. Although this video shows a great white scooping up a fisherman's catch off the Jersey Shore weeks ago, proving that the predators can be lurking just about anywhere. And since 2013, the average number of unprovoked shark bites globally has been 74. Guys, the number was actually lower the last couple of years, but this year we're on pace to exceed that. Joe and Savannah.
Oof. All right, Sam Brock, thank you so much.
Turning now to that mass shooting at a Baltimore block party that left 2 people dead and at least 28 others injured. Police say that many of those who were rushed to hospitals were minors. NBC News correspondent George Solis joins us now from the scene in Baltimore. George, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, good morning. A lot of anger and frustration in this community. As I mentioned, 2 fatalities, an 18-year-old and 18-year-old woman, 20-year-old man dead as a result of this shooting. And as you mentioned, half of those wounded are just teenagers. Now, police continue to investigate. And again, the search for answers and the search for shooters just ongoing now.
In Baltimore this morning, heartbreak after violence ripped through a community block party.
I got another gunshot wound victim, unconscious, unresponsive.
The celebration descending into chaos as gunfire erupted. 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez and 20-year-old Kylis Fagbemi killed in the attack that authorities say left 28 others wounded, half of the victims under the age of 18.
We don't know if they were targeted or if they were just shooting indiscriminately down the street.
A manhunt is now underway for the shooter.
We will not stop until we find you, and we will find you.
Laquel Nelson rushed 2 young shooting victims to the hospital.
She was shot there, shot somewhere up here, and she just kept screaming. And I just rushed through this. I have children, you know, and I would have wanted somebody to do that for my child if she was in dire need like that.
Just a short time later, another mass shooting. In Wichita, Kansas, 7 people wounded at a nightclub. All are expected to survive, and police have 1 suspect in custody. There have been a staggering number of mass shootings already this year, 338, according to the Gun Violence Archive.
This is a societal problem that we're dealing with. This is insanity. This cannot be the society that we are expected to live in.
Baltimore's weekend shooting, now the 2nd highest victim count so far this year.
Enough is enough with this. We're losing our children. These are babies. We're losing them to gun violence.
Yeah, Joe, police say they are looking for at least 2 shooters. No word on a suspect or a motive, although at this point we are expecting a press conference from city officials today at noon. A lot of people in this community say this is an annual event that takes place here, and there's usually a large police presence. Why that didn't happen this go-around is something police say they'll be looking into as part of their ongoing investigation. Joe?
All right, George, thank you so much.
There's a lot of reaction this morning to several rulings from the Supreme Court on high-profile cases to end the term. On Friday, the court rejected President Biden's federal student loan debt relief plan and also ruled in favor of a Colorado web designer refusing to work on same-sex weddings. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now with the latest here. Hey, Kelly, good morning.
Good morning. Some of those notable issues that closed out the term for the Supreme Court are right on the fault lines of American politics, highlighting divisions among the parties, the candidates, and putting pressure on the White House to try to protect the president's campaign promises. This morning, high court repercussions as 2024 candidates and the White House respond to the recent major Supreme Court decisions.
We are moving forward with another pathway to debt relief.
President Biden racing to find new ways to erase some federal student loan debt after the conservative justices blocked the president's first proposal, a decision that candidate Donald Trump praised in South Carolina Saturday.
They ruled against it, 100% against it. Amazing.
Another controversial decision is stoking divisions over gay rights. The High Court found that a Colorado Christian web designer has a free speech right to refuse to create gay wedding websites.
I think it's a real victory for religious liberty.
It comes as Trump's main rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis,
Everything in my power
is under fire for his campaign's new video posted on the last day of Pride Month, attacking Trump for his past support of the LGBTQ community. The video then features a sequence showing DeSantis' hard line on drag shows and transgender policy, interspersed with images of shirtless men and photos of Brad Pitt in the movie Troy. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the first openly gay cabinet member, was asked to respond.
I'm going to leave aside the strangeness of trying to prove your manhood by putting up a video that splices images of you in between oiled up shirtless bodybuilders.
Then questioned how that benefits the public.
Who are you trying to help? Who are you trying to make better off?
Some of DeSantis' Republican rivals also pushing back.
I don't think that's what leaders should be doing.
We should be talking about how do we embrace our differences.
Log Cabin Republicans, a group that represents LGBTQ conservatives, calling it divisive and saying DeSantis' rhetoric has ventured into homophobic territory. A DeSantis campaign official tweeting in response to criticism, identity politics is poison. There's so much fallout from those Supreme Court cases. So on a couple of the big ones, the White House says it will urge colleges to use an adversity score to promote diversity on campus. That comes after affirmative action in admissions was struck down. And on student loan forgiveness, while they write a new plan, and that will take some time, borrowers will have a grace period so that any missed payments will not trigger penalties. Savannah?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you so much.
For more now, we're joined by attorney and legal analyst Angela Cinnadella. Angela, good morning. So first, let's talk about the ruling from Friday on student debt relief. The White House is trying to use the HEROES Act amid the pandemic to cancel student debt. Clearly, conservative justices were skeptical, felt it was an overreach of executive power. So now the Biden administration could try to use the Higher Education Act to get that debt relief. Explain how that might work, and is it different from what the Supreme Court just struck down?
Right, Joe. So that last question is precisely what I want to discuss, which is that the problem with the Higher Education Act is that a lot of the statutory language is exactly the same as under the HEROES Act. So I believe we're going to see the same challenges and perhaps again to the Supreme Court. And that's because with the HEROES Act, the question was with the language waive. If the Secretary of Education can waive a provision, is that enough authority to actually cancel $400 billion of student debt? We saw the conservative majority here ruling that that was not the case, that waive and cancel have very different meanings. Again, in this new act, or actually the older act, the Higher Education Act, the same word waive is used. I believe we're going to see the same challenges. Also, this is going to require some form of congressional review. So it's going to be up to Congress whether or not this is going to actually see the light of day.
Angela, whenever we get a decision from the Supreme Court, there's often this conversation around precedent. What does this mean for future cases? What does this mean for similar situations across the country? And I want to ask about that in the context of that other ruling that we just heard about in Kelly's piece there, ruling in favor of the web designer who refused to work on same-sex weddings. What kind of precedent does that ruling have regarding LGBTQ rights? Will other businesses be able to now deny same-sex couple services based on that?
Savannah, that's a great question, because I would say here, this is where the dissent and the majority just vastly disagree on the impact on what businesses can and cannot do. And that's because the majority said, all we're doing here is really just repeating precedent, just doing what our Constitution has allowed us to do forever. And that is not allow a state to compel an individual to speak and say something they do not actually believe in. They cited precedent here involving the Boy Scouts, involving the state of West Virginia, not being able to compel school children to state the Pledge of Allegiance. So the majority is attempting to limit this decision only to expressive speech. But the problem here is you have an extremely powerful dissent by Sotomayor saying that, no, this is the beginning of the end. This is the first time we're actually giving a constitutional right to a business or to a person to reject someone based off of their status as a member of a protected class. So the impact on businesses, look, I would not recommend any businesses take this and actually discriminate.
So we're still digesting a lot from this term, but we can look ahead to the next term. It starts in October. And we know the Supreme Court's going to hear a case on whether people accused of domestic violence have the right to own a gun. What should we know about that case?
Yes. So last year, the Supreme Court really did expand the constitutional right to bear arms by giving that right to people in a public space. So outside of just defending the home, but also in public. And it's easy to think and to suggest that the Supreme Court next year will continue to expand that right. But often what the court will do is if they'll expand a right, they'll take a beat, then maybe the next term they'll curb it. So I am hopeful here that actually they will curb this right and not continue to allow abusers, et cetera, to have this right to bear arms outside of the home.
Certainly a lot of folks will be paying attention to that one, and I'm sure many more cases when that next term gets underway. Angela Senadella, thanks for helping us with everything. We appreciate it.
Coming up a little later on Morning News Now, new safety concerns over roller coasters this morning. Look at this. The scary video surfaced of a giant crack seen in a crucial support beam at a popular North Carolina amusement park. What's now being done to ensure your safety while on board?
But first, the latest on those widespread violent protests throughout France over the killing of a 17-year-old nearly a week ago. That's up next. We're back now with the latest on those huge riots in France. They were sparked last week by the killing of a French teenager by a police officer during a traffic stop. There were fewer arrests last night. Still, that country is on edge. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Paris. So, Matt, should we take this lower number of arrests as a sign that tensions are easing? What's the latest on the protests and on the investigation into the shooting?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. That's the question everybody here in France is asking, because this was a relatively quiet night. Only about 150 people were actually arrested, and that still sounds like a startling number. But we're talking about a high of well more than 1,000, nearly 2,000 on the night of June 30th, when the violence was seen throughout the entire country in these banlieues. Banlieue is basically often translated as a suburb, but it's kind of different from what we would know. It's a lot of high-rise, mostly minority communities that fill public housing. And that's where we've seen a lot of this violence over the past week. So, yeah, a lot of people that we've been speaking to hope that this is reaching an end, and they don't know why it has subsided so much. They think that there were appeals for calm from the family members of Nael, this young man who was killed, and also some shocking images that really repulsed a lot of French people and really turned a lot of public opinion against some of these protesters. Those who were in favor of reforms with the police saw the excesses that were done on the streets and decided that they no longer supported the protesters, if they ever did. So there's a big question here now, and that question that you gave gets right to the heart of it. Is this the end? Is it subsiding? Nobody here knows, but a lot of public officials are preparing for the worst.
Yeah, so Matt, even though things are calmer, rioters were out in full force on Saturday. We saw the home of one French mayor actually come under attack. Walk us through what happened there.
Yeah, and that was in the town I'm in right now, and there is a proposed march that's going to be happening here involving a lot of high-level politicians, mostly from center-right and right-wing political parties here, who are going to be marching in support of the police and of mayors throughout the country. And, you know, mayors and city institutions, you know, municipal establishments have come under sort of unique fire from a lot of these protesters, and that's something that a lot of people in these communities have been pointing out, that the protesters are targeting the very institutions and public services that they rely upon. And that's one of the grand ironies of this, and one of the things that I think has caused this to subside in the past week. Now, what happened here in this town? This is where we're south of Paris. This is a suburb. The mayor was here at the city hall in the middle of the night, just on Saturday night, when protesters took a car and rammed his private family home while his wife and 2 children were sleeping inside. So his wife and 2 children, they tried to get out. They fled the scene. His wife was badly injured, actually broke her leg trying to escape this mob who were trying to set fire to his family home. Now, these images, along with images that we've seen throughout this entire past week in France, have shocked the nation. And it's one of the reasons why we're starting to see a turn of the tide. And I think one of the reasons why we're starting to see a lot of this violence subside. Guys.
Yeah, Matt, we understand the grandmother of the teen who was killed did appear on TV. She was calling for calm. Real quickly, what else did she have to say?
She's calling for calm, and, you know, we heard this from the mother of Nael as well. They're saying that they don't want to be part of this. The family of Nael is saying those who are committing the violence are not doing this in the name of our slain son. They don't want their son's name sullied by attacks on schools and hospitals, police officers. You know, the family has been out here since the beginning. And in fact, we heard from the mother herself saying she doesn't blame all of the police. She just blames the one man who pulled the trigger. And that's an important difference, and one of the things that I think has really taken hold among the public here in France.
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you so much.
Well, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is heading to China this week. The Treasury says Yellen will discuss a number of economic and financial issues. Senior administration officials say the trip is intended to, quote, deepen communications between our 2 countries on a range of issues. The official said it was vital to maintain communication to prevent misinterpretations and unintended consequences. The visit, though, comes amid strained relations, of course, between the U.S. and China.
More international news now. Breaking overnight, an outbreak of violence in the occupied West Bank.
NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Labonga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Good morning. That's right. Overnight explosions and heavy gunfire echoed across the West Bank city of Jenin as an Israeli strike left at least 8 people dead and 50 injured. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces stated they launched an extensive counter-terrorism effort in the area. The strike was in a terrorist infrastructure at a joint operational command center for the Jenin Brigade, a Palestinian militant group associated with Islamic Jihad. Most reported injuries are serious, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, and 10 are considered critical. Now to China, where 10,000 residents around Beijing have been displaced due to severe flooding. With over 2,000 homes damaged and farm fields drowned, the damages and losses have been estimated so far at $79 million. The rain and high waters did bring a slight relief to those with no air conditioning, putting an end to the record 9 days of sweltering heat where temperatures exceeded 95 degrees Fahrenheit. But the break from the heat isn't expected to last long, and temperatures are projected to soar as high as 103 Fahrenheit later this week. And finally, a visit fit for a king and a president. President Biden is set to meet King Charles this July for the first time since his coronation. President Biden was unable to attend King Charles' coronation, but his wife and granddaughter made the festivities. On his trip across the pond, President Biden will also meet with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak before heading to Lithuania for the NATO summit. The meeting hopes to further strengthen the close relationship between the 2 nations. Savannah, Joe.
Maybe they can reenact it or something.
Yeah, coordination.
Do it again. And here's what you missed, President. All right, Claudia, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, coming up, we'll have a pretty important conversation this morning on childhood obesity and the growing popularity of weight loss surgery for teens.
It is a potentially life-changing procedure, but some doctors warn it is not for everyone. We're going to talk about it next. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. A North Carolina dad saved the day and possibly some lives when he spotted a structural crack in a roller coaster. Thanks to his eagle-eyed catch, the 325-foot coaster is now shut down. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has more on what happened and what we should all know about the safety at amusement parks.
Hey there. Well, luckily, no one was hurt, and now the ride called Fury 325 is shut down indefinitely with the State Department of Labor on the ground in North Carolina today to begin an investigation. The closure of the popular ride that sends guests soaring 325 feet into the sky comes as tens of millions of Americans turn to amusement parks for summer fun.
This morning, new questions swirling about safety after this alarming video of a giant crack in a roller coaster support beam, causing it to shift outwards as a car full of thrill seekers round the curve. Jeremy Wagner, who took the video at North Carolina's Carowinds amusement park, was shocked by what he saw.
I'm like, I can see light through it. And I'm not an engineer, but that's not good.
Wagner, whose family had just ridden that coaster, quickly told park security and the fire marshal, and the ride was shut down indefinitely. Carowinds, which is owned by Cedar Fair Entertainment, writing in a statement, "Safety is our top priority, and we appreciate the patience and understanding of our valued guests during this process."
It makes me second guess getting on a roller coaster now.
Fury 325 is one of Carowinds' premier attractions. Its website touts it as the tallest, fastest, longest giga coaster in North America that crosses the North and South Carolina border. This photo, taken by a park visitor just a week earlier, appears to show the cracks starting to form. The coaster has been operating since 2015, and Carowinds says Fury 325 and all of its rides undergo daily inspections.
How did it get to this point? And people are on that ride.
It's putting the spotlight on ride safety, just as amusement parks are starting the summer visitor crush. Last year, Missouri 14-year-old Tyrese Sampson fell out of a drop tower seat and died at Orlando's Icon Park. But despite the harrowing incidents, Jim Shea, president of Premier Rides, says safety measures are rigorous.
The same types of tools that are used in aerospace engineering are used in the theme park industry.
For Jeremy Wagner, he says his family won't be worried to get back on Fury 325 when it's fixed.
I would like to think that their safety protocols and fixing the issue would be secure enough.
Carowinds did not say what might have caused the crack in the beam or how inspection may have missed it, but they did say their rides, including Fury 325, undergo daily inspections. NBC News also reached out to Carowinds about that photo taken in late June, but they did not directly address it. Meantime, Charlotte police say they are confident in Carowinds' commitment to safety. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you.
Well, NASCAR made history in downtown Chicago this weekend, holding their first ever race on city streets. This was the scene on Saturday as professional drivers sped through a more than 2-mile course in Chicago's Grant Park. Thousands showed up to cheer them on Saturday. Saw part of the Xfinity race series, and Sunday was supposed to be the much anticipated Cup Series races, but the weather, other plans. This was the scene in the Windy City where steady rain gave way to massive flooding. Look at this. Oh my goodness, nearly covering cars, as you can see. Sunday's races were mostly canceled as a result.
More teens are getting weight loss surgery than ever before. The news comes after the American Academy of Pediatrics released new guidelines on obesity earlier this year, where they recommended surgery for those battling severe obesity. Despite this, some experts warn those procedures are not for everyone. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park takes a closer look.
She wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts.
17-year-old Ivan Chavez is living life to the fullest. These days, you can find him rooting for the Texas Rangers at the ballpark or belting out songs at a packed Taylor Swift concert. But just 3 months ago,
I used to not like taking pictures. I used to not like being in pictures.
At his heaviest, Ivan was over 300 pounds. In March, doctors performed a sleeve gastrectomy, a weight loss surgery that typically shrinks a patient's stomach by 60 to 80%. Since the procedure, Ivan has lost 55 pounds.
Whenever I'm looking at old photos, I'm like, oh, wow, this was me a couple months ago, and this is me now.
Is this something that you could have done with a traditional diet?
Absolutely not.
A recent study showed a near 20% spike in weight loss surgeries among youth between the ages of 10 and 19. And for the first time in 15 years, the American Academy of Pediatrics took a major step by endorsing the procedure as an option to treat severe obesity among teens aged 13 and older.
It involves medical clearances from subspecialists, including gastroenterologists, psychologists, nutritionists.
But some doctors are skeptical, arguing kids may not understand the lifestyle changes that come with the surgery.
If you're telling a kid you're going to need a lifetime of medical care and close follow-up, they may not be prepared for that.
Dr. Edward Livingston used to perform weight loss surgeries on teens.
I've seen a lot of people with bad results, including people who were fairly young when they got these operations.
Post-surgery, what are some of the side effects that kids could potentially see? The biggest one is the micronutrient deficiencies. The body's going to be absorbing a whole lot less in terms of caloric intake.
Ivan now follows strict dietary restrictions and has made major adjustments to almost every aspect of his life.
I could have easily served myself a full plate. Now I'm serving myself on a salad plate. I'm feeling really good.
He says it's all worth it.
I'm looking to lose around another 50 more pounds.
All while gaining a new lease on life. Kathy Park, NBC News, Dallas.
For more on this, we're joined by NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres, back with us this hour on another story. Hey there. So, okay, let's start with, just kind of addressing this sensitive topic head on. As far as when you're thinking about a teenager, in many cases still a child, when this is the right call or if it ever is for someone in that age group.
And it can certainly be the right call, and that's what the American Academy of Pediatrics, they put out their guidelines. And what they're saying in their guidelines, 13 to 17-year-olds, if they have a BMI of 40 or above, or if they have a BMI of 30 or 35 or above and have a risk condition, meaning they're having some other issues, cardiovascular disease or something like that. At the same time, this is one of the options they should be offered. Not the only option, but certainly one of the options, along with dieting, exercise, all those other options, to see which one works best for them in this certain condition, because it is a big surgery and they want to make sure that they're getting the surgery appropriately.
One of the benefits, as we saw in Kathy's story there, is improved self-esteem. What are some of the other benefits?
So mental health, definitely improved self-esteem is a huge benefit for them as well, but also health benefits. It reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. It reduces the risk of diabetes as they go along. But again, it is a complicated surgery, so you want to make sure it's the appropriate one.
I know one of the concerns is those nutritional deficiencies. Anything else?
So the micronutrients are one of the big concerns, especially vitamin D, because typically they don't absorb as much of the micronutrients as they normally do. On top of that, it's a very complicated surgery, and so they're going to have a lifetime of following for that surgery. They also are going to have a lifetime of dieting. So this is not just get the surgery and you're done. This is get the surgery and follow a certain lifestyle. There can be complications because of the surgery. There is a study that came out about a month ago looking at bone loss and found out that those that got bariatric surgery had higher bone loss when they were adults. And so definitely something to think about.
Bottom line, this is a huge decision where you're having lots of conversations before and lots of updates after, right?
Exactly.
All right, Dr. John Torres, thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.
Coming up, it is the latest online shopping craze that's bolted to the top of app charts.
Yeah, it's called Temu, and though many users shell out bargain bin prices for some decent quality items, you might be paying with more than your wallet. We will explain next.
We're back now with more on that deadly submersible tragedy that killed 5 people on the hunt for the Titanic. NBC News correspondent Kristen Dahlgren is taking another kind of dive for a closer look at what it takes to safely explore the deepest parts of the sea.
As pieces of the Titan were raised, so were questions about safety and the future of vehicles that are sometimes unregulated. Topics that hit close to home at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution.
We support science, we support exploration, and we support national defense.
Perhaps nowhere on Earth do they know more about submersibles.
There's 2 things that you don't sacrifice in innovation, and that's quality and safety.
Carl Hartsfield was an advisor on the search for Titan.
When you heard that Titan was made out of a carbon fiber hull with the titanium end caps, what did you think?
Well, the first thing I thought is that it's 2 dissimilar materials. How they're joined together is going to be critical.
The materials used here and their designs are tried and tested.
Other designs, like tubes, for example,
you have to make them extremely strong to handle the force. So the wonderful thing about a sphere is when you push it, it wants to stay that shape.
This 7-inch thick titanium sphere was the crew capsule of the Alvin Submersible as it carried the first humans to the Titanic wreck. It's been redesigned for current missions and exacting collaboration with the Navy. But basic principles haven't changed.
How much thought about safety went into this?
Oh my God. That is literally step one. We have fire extinguishers, we have emergency food, we have water. The sub is built around the idea that we have to come home.
The crew capsule and everything on board the deep diving submersible, even something as small as a camera housing, is pressure tested.
If it's a piece of Alvin equipment, gets tested
to 1.5 times greater pressure than it would experience on a dive.
This is capable of doing 20,000 psi, which is more than Challenger Deep, which is the deepest part of the ocean.
The reality is fewer people have gone to the ocean depths than into space.
Why do humans need to be at that depth?
It really goes to helping us understand our planet.
Vital research, they say, must continue safely. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Woods Hole, Massachusetts.
Well, now to that shopping app that's taking the country by storm. The prices are almost too good to be true. So is there a hidden cost? NBC senior consumer investigative correspondent Vicki Wynn is here with what you need to know before you click buy.
It's the shopping app at the top of the Google Play and Apple app stores, Temu.
It's a new Amazon type service where you get crazy deals on stuff.
Getting rave reviews on social media.
I got about 12 pieces of makeup for $30-ish. What? I got them on Temu, baby, for $14.
So how does it work? Well, I just downloaded the Temu app and instantly it's giving me a countdown clock for free shipping. The race is on and it's easy to see why it's so popular. Here's a makeup palette similar to the one made by Urban Decay. That one normally sells for $25 to $50. On Temu, it's only $5. Wow, 100 different colors of embroidery thread for just $3.68. So you got Bluetooth earpods. They look like the ones made by Apple, but these are only $8. And look at this. Wow, there are full-on wedding gowns for sale for $20 to $30. Temu says it's able to offer these deals because you're ordering directly from manufacturers, mostly in China, which is why it took 2 weeks for my packages to arrive. Everything is there, and although the quality isn't the greatest, it's not bad. Well, it's no Vera Wang, but it was under $30. In total, I got all of this, 20 items, for $251. Patrick Jackson with internet security company Disconnect says those deals could come at a cost.
I think the big problem with the Temu app is users may have a false sense of privacy.
We asked him to analyze how the app works. He discovered that on iPhones, Temu was collecting common types of data, including what kind of device you use and your phone carrier. Patrick, when you opened the Temu app and looked at what it was tracking about us, what did you find?
So I found it collecting various data points, but the one that concerned me the most was the IP addresses.
Think of an IP address as a unique identifier for your computer or phone. Jackson says Temu was able to track consumers even if they told it not to, and even when they were not using the app. He doesn't know what they were doing with those IP addresses, but they potentially enabled Temu to link to even more personal information, such as a shopper's browsing and location history, sexual orientation, and political affiliation. We asked Temu about that, and they didn't respond. In a statement to NBC News, Temu says, "We are committed to the privacy and security of our users. The information is solely for enhancing our service, and we do not sell it for money. The collection of IP is a common practice in the industry and is fully disclosed and clearly stated in our privacy policy. We comply strictly with App Store rules on user information." But after we shared the results of our investigation, Apple said Temu was in violation of their app tracking transparency policy, but didn't specify how. They gave Temu 14 days to fix the app or be removed from the App Store. 9 days after we reached out to Apple, Temu updated the app, and Jackson says they are no longer collecting IP addresses. They also made significant changes to their Apple privacy disclosure to inform users they are able to link them to more data.
The merchandise that they sell is inexpensive to a fault. It's dirt cheap, which customers seem to love.
Mark Cohen, a professor at Columbia Business School, says consumers may not have realized that these rock-bottom deals came with a different price tag, their privacy.
We are hardwired to look for deals, bargains, cheap things. It gets our attention.
He says users should beware what they're trading when shopping online.
All right, wow. Our thanks to Vicki for that report. A lot of interesting information there, especially.
We hadn't even heard of Temu until now, so
we
now
had
we know.
not heard of it. Those prices, you get why it's addicting, but important information there.
Coming up, we're going to introduce you to perhaps Taylor Swift's biggest fan, and no, it's not Savannah.
But I will be part of this conversation. His name's John Drury, known on TikTok as the tatted up dancing trucker, and he stands at over 6.5 feet tall. He definitely could be her biggest fan in that way. That's right. He joins us live right after this.
Welcome back. If you took a look out of your window early this morning, assuming you were up that early, you may have been surprised at the size of the moon in the sky. That's because it was a super moon. That's one of 4 this year when the moon is closer to Earth than normal. The July moon is known as a buck moon, named after the antlers of a buck deer, which grow at this time of year. If you missed it, don't worry. You can still see the super moon for the next few days this week. That's assuming there's a clear sky, which we know there may not be depending on where you live. But I think it'd be cool if you had like the fireworks and the super moon in the backdrop. That'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah. I bet we will. Yeah.
It will, assuming it's not cloudy and rainy.
Assuming that fireworks at all are
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, finally this hour, at 6 feet 7 inches tall and weighing 340 pounds.
You're like a WWE ring announcer.
Yeah, I hope John was prepared for us to share that information. He might be Taylor Swift's biggest fan. Literally, there he is waving at us. He's making quite a name for himself in the Swiftie universe because he has also become TikTok famous now as the dancing trucker. John, good morning. It is so great to see you. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to talk with you now. Physical size-wise, you might have me beat in terms of biggest fan, but I'm right up there with you in loving Taylor Swift. And I know you just went to the concert in Cincinnati this weekend. I've been to 2 shows so far. So first, just tell me, has your life been changed?
Yes, it has. What a great experience. I love Taylor Swift. I love her mission. She's so inspiring. Her story is so inspiring. The way she got started in Nashville. And yeah, believe it or not, Taylor Swift has some good dance music.
She really does. It's so true. How did you first become such a big fan?
Well, I've been a fan probably for a decade now. But 2018, I was working security in Nashville on a Reputation tour. And so I was pretty much stage front, and I was so impressed with her performance, with the production of the concert. And man, she's a machine, you know. Just went Friday to the Eras tour and a 3-hour concert, you know, and she's a workhorse. She loves what she does. She loves her fans. And it's just you can feel the love, and everyone's so happy at her concerts. I love that.
I know. Isn't the show just epic? I mean, 3.5 hours or something like that of her it's so impressive. And night after night, week after week on this tour right now. So take me back, though, John, to the Reputation tour. So did you know much about her? Had you heard much of her music? Were you a fan? And then what happened to you that night when you're working security?
Yeah, actually, I was a fan. I've... Believe it or not, I'm a dance fitness instructor, and I used to play her music in my dance fitness classes. And yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to being there, you know, at the Reputation tour. And wow, it was just amazing, you know, the production, the way, you know, she sings, and I was like in awe of the whole thing. And I just felt very blessed to be there. And, I was so excited to see her again, 5 years later, in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, John, I know you scored a pretty impressive pick. Even big Swifties, this is awesome. Here you are with Taylor's mom. I think we've got it. There she is. There's Andrea Swift. How did this happen?
Well, fortunately, I was seated right by the VIP tent where Taylor's parents and grandparents sit. And, here comes Andrea, Taylor's mother, walking by. And I'm like, man, I have to get a picture. So Andrea, she was kind enough to sit there for a few seconds as I was fumbling with my phone, so nervous. And what a great picture. She's a beautiful woman, and Taylor looks so much like her mother.
Yes, John, this is a story for another time, but I met her once at one of the shows, and I was also very nervous about what to say to her. John, last question for you. You've got like over 500,000 followers on TikTok now. What was it like just for you being in that stadium? I mean, I saw plenty of people posting TikToks of you because they are fans of you now. What was that like?
That was pretty awesome. You know, I mean, that's what I do. I dance, you know, I'm not shy. I'm not afraid to dance in public because ultimately, when I dance, it makes people smile, and that makes me feel good. And so, yeah, I just, you know, my wife calls me an attention getter, so I guess it's for the good thing. So,
John Jury, thank you so much. It was so great to get to talk to you this morning. Happy Taylor Swift listening. I'm so glad you had a good time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I want to sign up for John's classes now.
I know, right?
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.